Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 228 based on novel. So let's start. The Path of the Saint. There were always people who possessed ideals and beliefs that others their age and even generation didn't possess. These people harbored feelings and fighting spirits that other people on their age and generation didn't have. They spoke what people their age and generation couldn't and did things people their age and generation couldn't. Maybe in the eyes of people their age and generation, or even the future generation, they might seem dumb to be offering their lives to a belief that seemed impossible. Yet those that pushed history and pushed generations to advance were these people with unwavering belief and ideals that seemed laughable. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor became Saint Woodcutter's disciple on the sacrificial altar. Saint Woodcutter stretched out his hands to hold him up by the elbow. He said with a smile, "Maybe your success in the future may be even bigger and even higher than mine. When you look at the current me in the future, you will become my teacher." Qin Mu walked up the sacrificial altar and saw Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor doing the disciple rite as he stood beside Saint Woodcutter. He said with a smile, "Teacher, junior brother, I'm a step late." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was astonished, then his frown turned into a smile. "Second senior brother." Qin Mu's face instantly turned black. "I think Heavenly King should still call me Cult Master Qin. Second senior brother sounds very weird." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor laughed loudly. Qin Mu was stunned. He then revealed a smile. The time he had known Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor for wasn't long, and he only met him after entering Imperial College. Only afterward did they start talking. In the past, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was a man who didn't joke around. He had his firm belief and Tao heart, being able to do anything to achieve what he wanted. His thoughts were as deep as the sea and his face was calm like an old well. No expression could be seen on his face. He was like a perfect god that had no human feelings. However, after being in contact with him for so long, Qin Mu gradually discovered the human emotions on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He was gradually changing from a god into a human. And when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor laughed loudly, Qin Mu felt that his Tao heart had suddenly crossed into another realm, a realm that he couldn't understand. It was like God and yet not God, like human and yet not human. He was within the 7 affections and 6 desires, yet he was outside of it as well. He had the absolute rationality of God, yet he didn't have it as well. Such a person, Qin Mu already couldn't understand him. Imperial Preceptor's comprehension is indeed more outstanding than mine, having such a drastic improvement in his frame of mind after meeting Teacher Woodcutter for just this short while. As expected of the saint that appears once every 500 years. Qin Mu consoled himself and said, "However, lucky I'm the overlord body, as long as I work hard enough, I can activate all the potential of the overlord body and surpass him." Saint Woodcutter said, "Qin Mu, you can return to Supreme Emperor Heaven already. I need a long time to discuss with your junior brother." Qin Mu hesitated and asked, "What about Senior Tiger and Granny? Did their fight with Yuluo and Mutuluo have a result?" Saint Woodcutter said, "Mutuluo wore the clothes of that woman and he got beaten to death by the Black Tiger. On the other hand, Yuluo got saved by Fu Riluo. That woman and Black Tiger returned back to Supreme Emperor Heaven." "As I thought." Qin Mu revealed a smile. Saint Woodcutter opened a passage to Supreme Emperor Heaven for him and Qin Mu dilly-dallied, not willing to go in. "Teacher, I'll just listen at the side, I won't speak. As the senior brother, if there's anything junior brother doesn't know, I can also give him some pointers. Am I right, Junior?" Saint Woodcutter grabbed him up by the collar and stuffed him into the passage. Qin Mu planned to run back to listen, but the passage had already closed. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked with a smile, "Teacher, why don't you let senior brother Qin listen? He's not suitable." Saint Woodcutter said, "His nature is actually not suitable for our path." "What kind of person do you think your second senior brother is?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor muttered for a moment and he said, "Playful, eager, can't sit still, always rushing ahead, with a hot head yet is still cunning and meticulous. He's very smart and can think what others can't. He frequently can think of ideas that even I couldn't think of. Furthermore, he's also very magnanimous, having a very wide mind. He is also very confident, having confidence that's close to crazy. In his heart, he always feels he's the number one in the world although he claims to be number two. However, in terms of confidence, he is indeed the number one in the world." Rather detailed observations. Saint Woodcutter rubbed his palms and praised, "You understand him more than I do. I also felt this way about him. As a saint, he isn't suitable." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded his head. "Second senior brother is indeed not suitable." "What about big senior brother?" "Your big senior brother is another kind of person." Saint Woodcutter said, "He is a person with great willpower and he's very steady. As long as he set his mind on a goal, no one can pull him back. It's also because of that which is why he had slightly miscomprehension to the path of the saint. On the path of the saint, both of your senior brothers are inferior to you. Follow me to cultivation for a few years. I will teach you everything I have comprehended." He said slowly, "My willpower is low and I can never cross the pit in my heart. I'm always falling into the memories of founding emperor era, and I also have a knot regarding founding emperor's escape that can't be undone. You are different, you don't have this pit. You will learn what I have comprehended and you will just cross this pit. At that time, you shall become a true saint." His eyes became bright and he said with a smile, "For these few years, focus your mind on comprehending. No matter if it's Supreme Emperor Heaven or Eternal Peace, do not think about them, do not get involved. Focus on crossing the pit that I can't." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor acknowledged. The two of them sat across each other on the sacrificial altar. Supreme Emperor Heaven. Decaying City of the Devil Race. Decaying City was originally one of the 64 god cities of Supreme Emperor Heaven, and it had undergone huge renovation after landing into the hands of the devil race. Countless devils lived here, and they forged all kinds of devil god statues and devil palaces. This was considered the belly of the devil race's territory, as it was one of the earlier places to fall into their hands. Thus, there were numerous devils, and it was hard for humans to even find their way here. The devils here lived in peace and worked happily. There were even devil gods guarding the city and countless humans enslaved here, making the humans serve the devils, thus they were quite well off. When Kai-Shi was teleported to this place, Decaying City was currently celebrating a traditional festival, Sacrifice Festival. There were countless devil youths carrying livestock, while others beat drums and gongs. They danced strange dances that were accompanied by strange music that was filled with exoticism. There were also female devils with 4 faces, 4 arms and 4 breasts dancing on the festooned cars, attracting cheers with their alluring poses. They had to roam the city for the sacrifice. The sacrifice group raised the livestock and danced as they walked one round throughout the city. Only then did they raise the livestock to each and every sacrificial altar in the city. On the altars were devil gods that were smiling and looking at their clansmen celebrating. As this moment, the strong devil youths would bring the livestock up the sacrificial altar and offer their sacrifices to the devil god. The first one who brought the sacrifice up was a huge honor. And there wasn't just one group fighting to offer their sacrifices. It was the competition between hundreds to thousands of devil families in the city, thus it was very lively. A streak of light descended down from the sky, and Kai Shi landed on one of the sacrificial altars. "Old schemer, how dare he scheme me?" His voice was like a clap of thunder, reverberating through the lively sacrifice festival. All of the devils stopped and countless gazes landed on Kai Shi. On the sacrificial altar, that devil god was currently laughing, and he was ready to grab those offerings the youths were offering. The appearance of Kai Shi had also caught him off guard. Under Kai Shi's feet, the teleportation runes formed by the shining light were gradually fading away. He slowly raised his 3 heads up and looked around. Devil race. This executioner of the Crimson Light era suddenly blew up, and his 3 heads gave off a world-shaking roar, devil race. My clansmen had crossed billions of stars and crossed countless deadly zones, finally coming to the vicinity of our ancestral land after much effort. It was the devil race. It was the devil race that slaughtered their way in our planet, killing my clansmen, wiping out my race. His dried up and yellowish hair rose up and swept out in all directions like tens of thousands of yellow-colored swords. This attack only took an instant. In a radius of 300 yards, all of the devils held onto their throats. Someone raised his hands and he saw warm devil blood on the palm he had used to cover his neck. Someone lowered their head, and his head suddenly slid off his neck. In front of the sacrificial altar, the gorgeous canopy of a festooned car slowly slid off from the flowery poles. The cuts on the poles were very clean. The roof of a house suddenly slid off as well and crashed onto the ground with a loud rumble. Next, the top of the palaces started to slide down one by one while the roofs of the houses also slid down as well. In the radius of 300 yards, heads fell to the ground and blood was spurting everywhere. Countless chi and blood transformed into red lines to flow to Kai Shi from their thoracic cavity. On the sacrificial altar that Kai Shi descended on, that devil god avoided this move of his and he couldn't help breaking down when he saw such a sight. With an angry roar, he stretched out his hands to grab 2 devil god weapons to attack Kai Shi. Kai Shi's 6 arms were like a storm, striking countless times in just a short instant. He shattered the devil god weapon, and shattered the body of that devil god as well. The other devil gods flew over from other sacrificial altars to come attacking. One of the devil gods recognized Kai Shio, and he shouted mournfully, "It's him. I was him who had brought those planets to descend on our Luofu heaven, it's him that had wiped out our Luofu heaven. It's him who had killed our previous respectable king. Die." Countless voices came from Decaying City, and uncountable strong devil practitioners rushed at Kai Shi with anger that overflowed to the sky. Not long later, Decaying City was completely silent. Kai Shi's 6 eyes were crimson red, as he breathed heavily. As this moment, he had already had his fill of chi and blood. He had already recovered to his peak and by logic, he could totally leave and stop killing. However, he still continued his massacre, killing everyone in this devil city until there were no life forms that could stand up other than him. "I've brought my clansmen to float in the space for thousands of years, all just to find our ancestral land. It was you guys, you killed my clansmen and only I was left, only I was left." His 6 arms opened wide and he stretched out in all directions to grab the devil god weapon that he had broken collided in his surroundings and formed a huge metal sphere. Kai Shi's 3 heads spewed fire and refined the broken pieces of devil god weapons, smelting them and forging them into 6 bright divine knives. With the 6 knives in his hands, he looked into the distance where the devil gods from the other cities were hurrying over. Sounds of fight rang out as numerous devil god roared angrily. They attacked Kai Shi. After a bloody battle, corpses piled up like a mountain, and even Kai Shi couldn't help feeling tired. What he cultivated was Anusrava fighting god technique, and this kind of technique seized the chi and blood of others to maintain oneself to always be at peak performance. Furthermore, with 3 heads and 6 arms, his close combat could be said to have reached a perfect realm. As long as enemies were injured, blood would flow continuously and the blood lost would pour into his body. As the battle dragged on, it was more beneficial for him. This God technique could be said to be one of the most outstanding technique during Crimson Light era. Back then, many people cultivated this and the number of gods cultivating this was naturally not little as well, thus the gods of Crimson Light era usually had the appearance of 3 heads and 6 arms. Anusrava fighting god technique had 2 flaws, and the first was that it took a huge burden on the body so one would feel their corporeal body becoming tired. However, their chi and blood would become more and more vigorous. The second place that was lacking was the divine art. Since it was a close combat technique, his attainments in divine arts weren't especially high. This executioner of Crimson Light era sat on top of the pile of corpses as night fell. There were numerous flames around, and those were the flames left behind by divine arts, giving off trails of smoke into the night sky. Decaying city was broken. Paper boats were currently sailing over from the darkness, and the messengers of death on the boats came to fetch the souls of the dead. Kaishi looked at these messengers of death that had suddenly appeared expressionlessly, and he didn't question anything. He was the executioner of Crimson Light celestial heavens after all. He was already long used to seeing this kind of sights. He sat on the corpse mountain and looked into the distance. There was a 3-faced devil god walking towards him, and as he walked, that devil god was adjusting his state. It was a terrifying opponent with extraordinary abilities. Respectable King Fu Riluo. Kaishi stepped on the head of one of the corpses under him while his other leg just hung down freely. He was also stabilizing his breath and regaining his composure. He was trying his best to suppress his anger and waiting for the moment to unleash it all. His opponent was the respectable king of the devil race. He had once slain another respectable king, and he had relied on God execution mysterious knife. He knew how powerful and terrifying this kind of opponent was, so he needed to perfect his frame of mind. He couldn't give his opponent any chance at all. His anger and his thirst for revenge provided him with power. However, it could also make him lose his rationality. Only by suppressing his anger and waiting for the moment where life and death were determined, could he deal a fatal blow to his enemy by suddenly bursting forth with the anger he had suppressed for so long. At that time, he would be able to fight to his heart's content and shed his anger. The successful revenge would bring immense joy to his Tao heart. From the distance, respectable King Fu Riluo was still walking over, and if one didn't see clearly, he didn't look like a devil god of the devil race. On the other hand, he looked like a handsome middle-aged man that was learned and refined. As he walked, his arms moved up and down as he executed divine arts after divine arts. However, these divine arts only gathered and didn't disperse, they held back their power without releasing. The frequency of his legs taking strides wasn't fast, but his speed was extremely fast. It gave others the illusion that he was rushing down from a high mountain. This was a kind of aura, an invincible aura. His outward appearance didn't rely on the frequency of his legs striding out. The frequency of his footsteps was very slow, yet he gave off an outward appearance of being unrivaled. The speed of his divine arts accumulating was extremely fast, and this made Kaishi felt pressurized. The pressure grew stronger and stronger, until he couldn't sit any longer. Behind him, layers of space suddenly bloomed and made Decaying City move further and further away from him. Not only that, the corpses near the corpse mountain were also gradually moving further away. Fu Riluo's divine arts have already made preparation for the fierce battle that was about to occur, and that was to shift the corpses of these devils, so he couldn't borrow any chi and blood. If he still doesn't make a move, Fu Riluo's invincible aura would be complete. Kaishi rose into the air. His 6 hands wielded the 6 long golden knives and swung them up and down, exploding with all kinds of battle technique divine arts. The battle technique divine arts were like a torrent formed from waves, and the waves overlapped each other continuously. As they accumulated, the wave of knife lights piled up higher and higher. He took a step and his speed became faster and faster. With every step, he walked on air that was 300 yards above the ground, yet depressions in the ground suddenly appeared as though they were dried-up lakes with the shape of footsteps. The ground trembled and dried-up lakes with shapes of footsteps appeared one after another. Even the mountains sunk down from being stepped on. He closed in on Fu Riluo, who was walking calmly at an incomparably terrifying speed. The footstep lakes appeared quickly in front of Fu Riluo, and they were only 600 yards away from Fu Riluo. Two terrifying existences finally collided. Far away in a city tower of Li City, Qin Mu was just preparing to rest, when he saw a light coming from the west at this moment. In the west, that place was the territory of the devil race. The youth standing on the city tower looked into the distance while light burst forth in the night sky. Even though the distance from here to there was far, the light was still extremely piercing to the eyes. That light was like a very sturdy tree, and the huge tree suddenly rose steeply as the torrenting light rushed into the sky. Even in Li City, he could see the light pillar growing upwards. Next, incomparably bright branches branched out from this bare tree, and the tree branches showed dazzling shapes of lightning. Qin Mu looked and tried to use Nine Heavens' Eyes awakening skill to see the activity, there yet he couldn't see the situation there clearly at all with his current eyesight. With such a far distance, he couldn't even see 100,000 feet mountain, much less the figures of gods. But he could well imagine how intense and violent the situation of the battle was. Could Fu Riluo and Kai Shi have crossed hands? He thought to himself. Everyone in Li City was alarmed and they all flew into mid-air, or scaled high places to see this rare sight. After having the first branch, light burst out from the trunk as the second branch of light spread outwards, followed by the third, the fourth. More and more branches stretched out from the tree of light, and they became more and more concentrated. In just a few breaths' time, Qin Mu, all the divine arts practitioners, and gods in Li City could see a huge tree of light rising in the dark sky on the west. The crown of the tree was densely packed and swaying imposingly. Right at this moment, the tree of light suddenly became dim and vanished. Darkness returned back to the west. The battle has ended. Qin Mu's heart was still pounding and he muttered, Fu Riluo and Kai Shi, who had won? I don't know. A voice came from his back. Qin Mu hurriedly turned back to take a look, and he saw true God Pang Yu, God Sang Yi, and the rest of the gods in Supreme Emperor Heaven behind him. These gods had appeared like a phantom, and it must be, because the city tower was the highest, so they had all came here to take a look at the strange sight in the west. True God Pang Yu shook his head and said, even though I had fought Fu Riluo numerous times, they had mostly ended in my defeat. There are not many people that could be a match for him. With my experience, Fu Riluo had already executed all he could in that battle just now, but it's hard to say if he had won or lost. Even if he had won, it would be a bitter victory. Qin Mu's heart started to itch. I really want to go there and take a look. True God Pang Yu became alert and he said, Cult Master Qin, Imperial Preceptor, and Heavenly Teacher are both not here. It's best if you don't create any trouble. Qin Mu said solemnly, True God, I have already come to Supreme Emperor Heaven for half a year. Have you seen me creating trouble before? Don't accuse me. True God Pang Yu was full of smiles and he nodded his head. Yes, I understand everything Cult Master Qin says. My words were inappropriate. May Cult Master forgive me. God Sang Yi came to his ears and whispered, City Lord, have you forgotten how he smashed the sons of our Supreme Emperor Heaven? Shush. Pang Yu suppressed his voice and said, he doesn't have a grasp of what he did, but do you not as well? His heavenly teacher's disciple, you and I can't provoke him. What's more, he He even got Imperial Preceptor to create 2 sons for us. They are much nicer looking than the previous sons. God Sang Yi immediately shut his mouth. Qin Mu looked at the darkness in the west that was growing thicker and thicker. He gripped his fist tightly and suppressed his voice while saying excitedly, Fu Riluo and Kai Shi are both heavily injured now. Now is the best time to take their heads. How I want to pick up Fu Riluo and Kai Shi's head. True God Pang Yu was startled and he threw a glance at God Sang Yi. Watch him, don't let them create trouble. Sang Yi nodded his head repeatedly. On the other side, outside of Decaying City, Fu Riluo landed on the ground, and he turned around to vanish into the darkness. Kai Shi also landed on the ground with a stumble. He suppressed the blood-filled his chest, but he still couldn't suppress it. His body suddenly split apart, and spoiled blood spurted out violently. His 3 heads and 3 mouths were spewing blood continuously. His body shriveled up in a short moment, and the 6 knives in his hands shattered. Both Fu Riluo and he had indeed suffered heavy injuries, and both of them had never said a word from the start until the end. There were only dull sounds of fighting, and in that short period of time where they fought, they managed to heavily injure each other, and almost exhausted each other completely. The reason why Fu Riluo turned to leave was because he had numerous wounds on his body, and he was worried Kai Shi would take the chance to seize his qi and blood, therefore retreating was the best method to slay Kai Shi. He just needs devil gods without wounds to come forward, and they would be able to take Kai Shi's life easily. As the sage of the devil race, he was very clear, much clearer than anyone. Kai Shi also understood why Fu Riluo had retreated, so he knew he couldn't stay there any longer. Devil gods would probably come not long later to take his life. Yet his qi and blood had withered, so he couldn't walk much further. He would be caught up by the devil god, and when that time comes, his death would be due. Am I going to die here? Kai Shi knelt down and his 3 heads hung down. His heart was depressed. I haven't even returned back to the ancestral land, haven't returned to my clansmen in hiding, to tell them about the situation of the ancestral land. I can't accept this. Far away in Decaying City, a lump of black gas floated to and fro among the corpses like a phantom. Sometimes it was like a small tree, sometimes it was like a stubborn rock. There were also small flags around this lump of black gas that floated around, absorbing the devil qi, claiming the broken souls that the messengers of death didn't want. This lump of black gas floated and have numerous transformation. Sometimes it would even land in the flames from the divine arts, turning into flame. Not long later, this lump of black gas tried to come near Kai Shi and seemed to be hesitating. It obviously wanted to come up and check if Kai Shi was dead, to scavenge some wealth. Yet he was worried. You are a human, Kai Shi suddenly said. That lump of devil gas was astonished and turned into a bush in the next instant. Kai Shi continued saying, you don't have to transform in front of me, I've seen through your disguise. If you can save me, I will take you in as my disciple. I'll teach you the supreme art of Crimson Light era, Anusrava fighting god technique, granting you a huge benefit. That bush shook and the bush disappeared. A youth with 2 deer legs appeared in front of Kai Shi and he bent his legs to bow. Pangong Tso pays my respects to Master. Master, don't worry. I have been blending in the devil race for a few months now. In terms of ability to escape, no one would dare to say they are better than me. Early in the morning, Qin Mu came to the monastery of Buddhism that was located at Li City and knocked on the door. He sought an audience and said, I'm here to meet Old Ma. The monk that received him hurriedly went back to inform. The reason why Qin Mu said Old Ma and not Rulai Ma was because Rulai Ma was the leader of Buddhism. He needed to oversee Great Thunderclap Monastery and promote Buddhism. Meanwhile, Old Ma is his kin. One was identity and one was kinship. Coming to meet Rulai Ma, he needed to bring out the identity as human emperor, and Heavenly Saint cult master. To meet Old Ma, his identity was a child raised up by Old Ma. After a moment, the receiving monk came forward and said, "Old Ma invites you." Qin Mu revealed a smile, and he followed him into the monastery. This monastery was given to him by the gods of Supreme Emperor Heaven. The monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery built a monastery and cultivated daily. Qin Mu raised his head to look, and he saw 20 heavens hanging hazily above the monastery. There were still numerous monks under the 20 heavens that were chanting scriptures continuously. The chantings would collide in the sky and transform into trails of Buddha light, pouring into the 20 heavens. 20 heavens were the heavens of Buddhism, and the apparition of the 20 heavens that was floating above the monastery wasn't real. Qin Mu pulled back his gaze. At this moment, he saw a simple elder, who had removed his Rulai's cassock, and looking at him with a smile. Old Ma. Qin Mu became agitated. Ever since Old Ma became Rulai Ma of Great Thunderclap Monastery, they couldn't meet each other as frequently anymore. When he took off his cassock, he was meeting him as a family member, so how could he not be agitated? However, this place was the Buddhist rite of Great Thunderclap Monastery, and there were monks everywhere. He needed to control the feelings in his heart, and not bring any trouble to Old Ma, troubles regarding the mind. Grandpa Ma, didn't you guys already contact the 20 heavens long ago? Qin Mu was stabilizing his frame of mind and he said curiously, "Why are you still trying to get into contact with the 20 heavens? Could the Buddhas of Buddha realm not have imparted techniques and skills of a higher level?" They had imparted. But it wasn't much. Old Ma led them to the side of those monks that were chanting and trying to make a connection with the Buddha realm. He saw that the interior of this monastery was very wide and close to 1,000 monks were sitting in the lotus position. Some sat on the flat land and some sat in the air. There were even some that sat on top of the pagoda. The intention of the Buddha realm is for us to focus on cultivating, to not dabble into the struggle of the mortal world. They didn't seem to want to bother with the mortal world, and it was like as if there was a lot of taboo. My intention was for them to impart more profound techniques. Buddha have the heart to save the people of the world, so how could they not help when they see mortals falling into trouble? Qin Mu looked around. Among the 1,000 monks, they were male, female, humans and demons. They were all chanting and not giving peace to the 20 heavens. This kind of fighting method was like a method of harassment. By chanting the names of Buddha, the Buddha would be able to hear, and these monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery were doing just that. There were originally a few Buddhas who had imparted their skills, but afterward, nobody else imparted their teachings anymore. I wanted to invite them down to the lower bound, but they also aren't willing to come down and assist us. Old Ma shook his head. In my opinion, they aren't actually afraid of being tainted by the mortal world, they are fearing some terrifying existence. Even though they have profound realms and profound techniques, their frame of mind has already dropped. Just a few days ago, the Buddhas of the Buddha realm couldn't take the harassment any longer, and suggested to have a contest of Dharma between Son of Buddha. Contest of Dharma? Qin Mu instantly became excited and he said with a smile, "How do they compete?" "It's just picking out the best disciple of Buddha, and see whose attainments in Dharma is higher. This kind of competition takes place across space. I've sent out John Kong." Old Ma raised his hand and pointed. "John Kong is there. He has already defeated a few of the Son of Buddha from the 20 heavens." Qin Mu raised his head to look, and he saw Devil Ape John Kong sitting on a pagoda. That pagoda seemed to be on the same height as the 20 heavens. In front of him sat a Son of Buddha. He rode on a precious elephant that was covered with jade and pearls, looking extremely gorgeous. Behind the precious elephant was a gorgeous cluster of monasteries. Light swirled behind the heads of all the huge Buddhas, as they put on solemn and dignified expressions. Both of their debates were rather intense. The words of that son of Buddha from the 20 heavens flowed out endlessly like a river, and the content of his debate didn't stop for an hour. His voice was sometimes reverberating and impassioned, while deep and low at other times, making others couldn't resist wanting to hear in detail. This eloquence could even be said to be a lengthy speech that no one could refute. This video will end here.